Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given.
It's unbelievable what goes on in that culture today, and just it's crazy. And I'm thankful for warriors like us that push past all of this, because we can stay in that place, right? We can stay in that victim stance and just give up on the Lord, give up on all of it, right? But we keep pushing past all of that and trying to help others recognize their own healing path as well.
Yes, that's all you can do is pray for them and just try to be that light. Thanks for listening to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Karen W. On today's show, we have Lisa Michelle. She's the author of the book Unlikely Warrior, a voice rising out of the darkness of child sexual abuse and exploitation. Lisa is a voice and advocate for the exploited, who has dedicated her life to seeing women and children freed from sexual exploitation. She's the founder of Untethered Ministries, a nonprofit that guides women and children into inner healing from sexual exploitation or trafficking, and Lily & Company, whose curated gifts and products are handcrafted by survivors. It took us a while to get you scheduled and connected, but I'm so glad we finally have you on the podcast. So welcome to the show, Lisa.
Yes, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you guys. I'm so honored to be here and grateful that it's finally happened.
Yes, we are too. And your book was awesome. I love
we haven't really talked too much about sexual abuse too much on any. This may be our first.
I think we've talked about a little bit.
But not much. So,
oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
we definitely need.
I mean, it's a hard subject, definitely to talk about, and I've pushed past all of that and through that shame. So I'm so honored to be able to share.
Yeah, a lot of people that will message me that have struggled in that area or had that happen to them, really, it's a hard path to healing. So I just praise the Lord that you've healed as much as you have and are able to help others heal through this.
Yeah.
It's difficult. So hi, Lisa. This is Brenda J.
Hi, Brenda.
Your story of what you went through at the hands of your father and neighbor is a story of sexual abuse and exploitation. No one should have to endure what you went through. You used what happened to you to now be your ministry. Can you share your background and give an overview for our listeners?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just having that conversation a minute ago, thinking back to the very first time that I ever shared my story, I just remember having to push past all of that shame and being able to say the words out loud of what happened to me were so hard to break through that barrier. But the more I did it, the more I became confident in what I was saying. So when you said we're going to talk about sexual abuse for the first time, and I went, yay, a lot of people are like, what is she talking about? I remember the first time I was 28 years old and I heard a woman speaking about being sexually abused and exploited. And as I'm listening to her share her story publicly and listening to her words, I quickly realized she was articulating what had happened to me as a little girl. But as a 28-year-old woman, I had not identified yet in that at all. And so I just remember feeling so petrified. My hands were sweating. My voice was cracking. I was so scared, just even listening to her and her truth. Yeah. And then once she said all these things, it was like, it was sitting there in my lap and it was like, here it is. Now, what are you going to do with it? And so it's so important that we do talk about uncomfortable things. And for me, my abuse started when I was really little, unfortunately, at the hands of my own father. He was an alcoholic, a very abusive man, and he was a pedophile. He loved to be with children. And unfortunately, I was the one that got abused the most sexually and verbally, and he would assault all of us actually, physically. But that lasted in our household up until the age of 14. And because of that continual sexual abuse happening to me, I found my identity in that. I didn't know I was good for anything else. And I sought affection and love in that lane because that's all I knew. And I thought my relationship with my dad was normal. I didn't know it wasn't normal until I started to hear other people's relationships. So it was really hard to figure out all of that as well. But his abuse was so extreme, and it left me vulnerable to a man who lived across the street from us. He was a businessman. He ran our local funeral home. He was the funeral director there. And he was a very evil, vile man. And I didn't know any of this. My family thought that he was just the grandfather type that liked to hang out with little kids. And they would let us stay the weekend at this funeral home because he lived inside of the funeral home. And they had no idea that this man was drugging me through chocolate chip cookies and lemonade that he gave us. And then he sexually exploited me through child sexual abuse material. And that's, known as child pornography, but today's terms are child sexual abuse material because that more closely communicates the actual crimes that happened at hand. And this man he was literally something out of a horror film. And all those memories didn't start coming back to me till I was in my 30s. And actually just about a decade ago, I've learned more about that experience inside that funeral home from other survivors and other children that were there. Since I came out with my book, even in the last 6 months, I've had other people come forward as well. So it's crazy that I've lived this journey of finding out who I am right now as a woman. Sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, and trafficking is a lifelong battle of just finding out who you are and walking in your healing path as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, well, it's just amazing to me, the resilience of the soul to go through that. And that's what, to me, your book just echoed as I read through it. It was just so inspiring. So, because everything you went through was like some of the most damaging things that a girl can go through, especially because it was your father. And then, this neighbor, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Seeing your fighting spirit was so beautiful in the book. And I just want to read a few of your inspiring quotes, just to start off with. So this is a quote from your book. As you read these pages, my hope is for you to be inspired to be the person you were destined to be. Your past will no longer hold you hostage. You will walk your healing path out and find your true identity. But I will tell you something. I had to fight for my sanity and fight for who I am today. Life is so much more than what was dealt to you. It's time to arise from your current situation and be all you were meant to be. So to read those words, especially after you just shared everything you've been through, to me, that's just so inspiring. And it's just spiritual warfare. Your book is a record of that. Can you share more about the spiritual battle you've endured with regards to all this abuse that you've gone through?
Yeah. For me, the spiritual battle part of it didn't come until kind of like maybe a few years after of fighting in the mental health capacity and going to church and all of that. But I had a family member that was trained in spiritual abuse and satanic ritual abuse and all of that. And I could not find breakthrough, you guys. I could not mentally get past certain places in my life. And we couldn't figure out what it was and what was holding me back. And it was the spiritual aspect of it. So I had to go through deliverance, and there's generational curses. There's demonic transferences that happen. And I was literally being tortured by the demonic at the time. So, and we couldn't figure out what it was. But once I went through this deliverance and really, focused on the spiritual aspect of it, is when I saw major breakthrough in my life. Yes. And I'm really adamant about that now, just in the work that I do today too, because I'm grateful to be a ministry as well with the women that we work with today, because I feel the spiritual part of it is just a huge part that just gets overlooked in this.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like everyone I talk to, I say there's a spiritual aspect to healing that you can't leave out, or you don't have full healing.
Right. Yeah. And I was being tortured by the demonic. Completely tortured mentally, everything. And I would have visitations. I would have the craziest things happen to me. And once we got rid of all of that, it was like I was a completely different person, different personality, everything. It was truly amazing. And that's when my leadership role and the woman that I am today really began.
Wow. Well, you started a nonprofit to help those working in the sex industry. You go to strip clubs, massage parlors, etc., and you speak not to just women, but to the men too. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, we're called Untethered Ministries. We have a program called NSA Girls, and that is our program doing outreach and intervention, going into the really dark, seedy places, the places where that don't have windows, the places where most people wouldn't, like you talk about the demonic. You walk in there and you're seeing a lot of manifestations that are going on. You can feel it, sense it. But before we go in, we take over that whole territory. And it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever experienced in my life, because you literally show up, you can feel the demonic, you can feel everything that's going on. And we take command over that entire entity, over everything that's happening there, and very spiritually aware of what we're doing. And we walk in there, and I didn't even think about it until just this moment as I'm saying it, like with authority, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're coming in onto the battlefield and we are looking for the one. And we're like, okay, Lord, where do we go? What do we do? Every single time he shows us not only the one, because he loves multiplication, he shows us more than one. And it's literally the most beautiful thing, because instantly we'll have the DJ, we'll have the managers, we'll have the owner, we'll have guys in the club that are like, what just happened? Like, did you guys just feel that? Like they could feel the atmosphere shift, even in their drunkenness, even in their whatever they're doing at that time. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Being part of the church for so long, I realized, there's a lot of judgment out there. And if we're not going to minister to those people, who is going to minister to them? Somebody has to. Jesus loves everyone. And we have to see everyone through Jesus's eyes. He loves everyone. He cares about that person in that strip club and that bar as much as he cares about me and you and Karen, and he cares about us all.
Yeah.
So it is hard to see that judgment of like, well, they don't deserve to be loved. No, they deserve. Jesus loves them too. God loves them too. So I love what you're doing.
Yeah. And I love that you prepare that and, take that time to pray, because I never really thought about that, but just taking that time to, be prepared in prayer before you even go in is amazing.
Yeah. Critical. It's critical.
Yeah. I can see how that would be.
Yeah.
As you share your journey with sexual abuse and how you had to disassociate to survive, which is very common for sexual abuse survivors, can you share more about that disassociation?
Yeah. Like I said, when I heard that woman speaking at 28 years old, it was the first time I was like, wait, all of a sudden hearing those words, there was like a light bulb that went on inside of me that then connected with my body and my brain that said, wait, I think that happened to me too. So I was living my lifestyle, disassociating from my thoughts, my feelings, my memories, and my sense of my true identity of who I was. I was lost, so to speak, and just completely disconnected from all of the childhood sexual abuse and the exploitation that happened to me. And I did that through drugs and alcohol, through seeking men and their attention, through sex, and just not being self-aware of what happened to me. But our brain protects us, from those things. And there is a time, and that was my time to start to sift through the files, so to speak, of what happened to me. And I had a safe place. I found a psychiatrist. I found a community that surrounded me and loved me during that time. And I was able to start to connect with my body and start to connect with my mind so I could experience that healing.
Yeah, I didn't realize I had a total body-mind disconnection as well. And I think there's different forms, which we talked to with Sheila Gregoire, is when they're narcissistic, it's all about them. And I totally disconnected because I was emotionally abused. I was criticized. I didn't realize how much I had emotionally disconnected from my body as well. So it is interesting.
Yeah,
it is when you learn about it, because you don't know you're in it when you're in it, right?
Right. At the age of 14, you somehow found the courage to say no to your father and his abuse. What made that moment such a profound awakening?
I think for me, it was the first time that I used my voice and that I stood up to him. I was 14. I had just got sent to my dad's up in the Redding area. My mom had put me on a Greyhound. She couldn't deal with me with all my, behavioral challenges at the time and my addictions at the time. And she just was done with me. And she sent me to him. He was newly married, had 2 stepkids in the house, and he came in drunk. about 2 a.m. and came straight to my bedroom, and I was dead asleep. And he came in and he sat at the side of my bed, and I knew what was next because it had been a while, because I was with my mom. I was older and I knew what was coming. And I felt this, and it's the beginning of who I am today. I felt this inner roar within me. It hadn't happened to me in so long that I just thought, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not going there. I'm not going to let this happen to me anymore. And I can stand up to him. I can beat him up. I was just like full of rage. And I just remember like when his hands started to touch my body, and I just screamed, no, as loud as I could, and dead silence in the room. And I immediately started to shake, and I thought, he's going to kill me. He's going to strangle me. He's going to kill me. Something really bad's going to happen here. And he got up from the side of the bed and stood there for a few minutes. He didn't say a word. He stumbled to the door, cracked it open, and he turned around and looked at me. And then he just went down the hallway. And unfortunately, he went to my stepsister's room, and you can read the story in the book, but I'll never forget that moment of standing up to him and just feeling that inner warrior strength within me. And that's how, like, from that moment when I was 14, even though it was a short moment, that's the woman that I am today. I use that energy, that power to just say, no, I'm not going to do this, and to help me keep doing what I'm doing today as well.
Wow. I know when I read that in the book, like, you just hold your breath, and when you say that part, because you're like, most people that have that experience probably don't have that same reaction that he had, or maybe they do. I don't know how common that is, but that was just like
not common at all. Trust me.
I wouldn't think it would be. That's why it's like, oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. That pent up like lion inside of you, that roar that just came out, that stayed with you. What was hard about my situation is I got that angry at first a couple times, but realized that I couldn't win and continue to get beat up for the next 22 years. So then you lose all your fight. You have nothing left. And it's okay, because now I just use God's strength every day. So even though I don't really have my own strength, God is my strength and he's my song. So I'm glad that you have that, though, that fight in you.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. And like you said, it is different for me in that moment too, because, I did have intense shame that he went to my sister's room. Thank goodness my stepbrother got involved that night and nothing happened. But then they got to find out who my dad really was, because he hadn't been doing that yet in their home. They were all so new to him. But, because I did have that power over him and he did leave me alone for the first time. Like you said, though, most women don't get that. I mean, 99% of women they don't have the ability to stand up to their abuser yet, Right. So it was a very unusual moment.
Yeah, I think the first time the police came was when I felt that power, because I knew, wait a minute, I should have been calling the police the whole time. And that empowered me right there.
Yeah. There you go. Yep. That's good.
Yeah. So you shared that you started hanging out at a heavy metal club at a young age and became a groupie, which led to having relationships with some famous rock stars and traveling with them. Was that part of your disassociation?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what I did. Was me and my misfit friends ran to San Francisco. We hung out in that alleyway, and we just sat literally in the alley and drank Thunderbird, hanging out against the wall of that club. And across the way from us was a strip club, the back door to it, and then the back door to the heavy metal club. And one night, one of the guys came out to throw some trash out, and they had always said hi to us and stuff. We were so young, but he just said, you girls are always out here. Why don't I just get you some fake IDs and get you inside, and you can meet some older men and get free drinks? And we were like, what? I'm
not going to refuse that when you're that.
Yeah. So it worked out really well for us for quite a while, but I stayed in my addictions. I disassociated, and I just dove into that whole lifestyle for a really long time, because I met my first boyfriend there, lead singer of a band. Then I meet my next boyfriend there, who's another lead singer of a huge 80s rock and roll band. And then about a year later, I meet the drummer of another popular 80s band. And I was with him for about 4.5 years. So, I spent a long time diving really into my addictions. I started doing hardcore drugs during that time. And that's all I cared about. I mean, literally all I cared about was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I could care less about anything else. And so it was definitely my time of disassociating, not wanting to be around my family. I was, across the country, traveling on the road, and just not wanting to deal with anything that I went through.
Well, we grew up in the 80s, so
I see
the names of those bands.
She says it in the book.
Oh, she does.
Yeah.
I do say it in the book. Yes. No, it was Brett Michaels from Poison and Jimmy Chalfant from Kix. Yeah. And it's just crazy. I just spoke actually in Mechanicsburg a couple months back, and it was such a full circle moment because I was there with this huge audience sharing my story. And I'm like, this is the weirdest thing because I lived here and I was in this whole area and all that. And here I am coming back and sharing my full testimony. Wow. So it was a beautiful moment. Yeah.
Have you talked to any of those guys since then? Like, since now they know your story? I'm just curious.
Not in the last decade. So the last time I talked to Brett was like about 10 years ago. And that was a really cool moment for both of us. It was really amazing. I just told the, front guy at the concert, because I thought, oh, it's been so darn long. He's not going to remember me. But I told him who I was and that I wanted to see Brett, and I didn't have a backstage pass or VIP or anything, And so they let me right back straight to him. And I was like, oh my goodness. And it was just such a surreal experience for both of us. Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just going to say that all those 80s rock bands are now touring again because I'm a big fan of 80s rock. So
I know. And
it's so funny.
I did get invited on a cruise with them because I have a friend, one of my close friends, her husband's a guitar player for Stryper. And they just went on a cruise not too long ago with all these bands. And she's like, you have to come with us. And it didn't work out this time, but I will. And it's only a matter of time because my book's out. I've been on a lot of shows and everything that we'll reconnect again. And I'm excited to share with them because for Jimmy, when him and I ended up parting ways, we stayed connected for like 15 years. And my boyfriends back then, we would go backstage and hang out with him. So I had a great relationship with him for a really long time.
Wow, that's awesome. And it's funny because I wasn't a fan of Stryper back then because I wasn't a Christian, and I always thought they were kind of cool. Though I'm like, that's kind of cool because I remember hearing that they throw out Bibles to the crowd, and now they came out with a new album, and I'm like, that's cool. I think I would really like that album now.
Yeah, they're really coming back too. I remember being at a Poison concert one night, and hanging out with everybody, and Stryper was there, and they were throwing those Bibles out, and I was so, I had not known Jesus, never heard of him, had no knowledge of God. And I thought, these guys are weird. What are they doing?
Yeah, I remember thinking that too, because they wore the eye makeup and everything in the hair, like all the other 80s bands.
I remember them.
Yeah, they're so cool now. I love them.
I do too. I love them too.
Yeah.
What led you to church was when a man asked you to go to church. There were really hot guys at the church. So you went for the wrong reasons and you heard the message of the Father's love there that led you to Jesus. There are issues in the church, just as in the bar scene is what you describe. You had dysfunctional relationships in the church too. You say we need more programs and help in the church and to be more vocal of that. Anything you want to share on that?
Yeah. You want me to just tell the story? I had no knowledge of God, like I just said. And when I got that simple church invite, I just want to, anybody listening, all it has to do is, hey, do you want to go to church on Sunday? That's what this guy did. And I went, what, me? Why would you do that? Like, are you crazy? So, why would a girl like me show up at church? And I did fall for it. Oh, there's really hot guys. Oh, sure. I'll be there this Sunday. And so I show up, and yes, there were really hot guys, and I dated almost every single one of them in that church for over a year. And I went to church for all the wrong reasons. And every single Sunday, I kept hearing this message about a father's love. And that father's love is what drew me nearer to him because I hadn't experienced that here on earth. And so it was, God's sneaky that way. He got me in the door.
Whatever it takes.
Right? Here's the thing. So as I am finding out who I am in Christ, right? My identity, realizing that my old patterns aren't really working in the church and that I'm finding the same type of men inside the church as I am in the clubs. I realize that, wow, there's a lot of messed up men around here. And so I take a year off of dating and decide that, I need to purge off of men. That is not my answer, obviously, anymore. And I don't know if you guys know this, but this is crazy. 68% of church-going men over 50% of pastors and 76% of Christians 18 to 24 years old actively search for or consume pornography on a regular basis in our church. Isn't that just crazy?
It is.
It is a very big problem. It's a problem that we're not talking about in the churches that we need to get more vocal about. I experienced that myself just in the guys I dated. I remember dating the worship leader who was like one of the most popular guys in that church. This church was huge. And I couldn't believe what I was experiencing with him. So we have a lot to basically untether, right?
Yeah.
Inside of the church culture and with the men that were in there and everything. And, you know, I met my husband. We have been married for 26 years coming up in August.
Oh,
which is
great.
a miracle.
Yes.
He's seen me at my worst. You know, those first 4 years of our marriage were absolutely awful because I had so much inner healing work to do.
Yeah.
But the church definitely has a big, long road to travel on all of this.
Yeah, we just had Andrew Bauman on, and he talks about that. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He's wrote a book called The Sexually Healthy Male, but he talks about pornography in the church and all of that quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think there's this misconception that you're going to go into the church and everybody's perfect.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we're all a message. The only difference is we know we need Christ, that we really can't function without him. I mean, at least most of us in the church, not all. But I think there is that misconception like, oh, you're going to they're going to be so much better. No, they're messed up too. That's why they came. Pretty
That's
much
right.
most people, unless you were born in it. But yeah, most people came like you were invited and you're like, okay, now I need to fix myself for years. It's those people that aren't willing to heal or even go through healing at all that continue to stay messed up.
Yeah, they
And
continue the same
that's
pattern.
what's hard is you can't differentiate between the two. That's why you have to take your time and be like, okay, are they doing the work they need to do? Are they trying, but actually putting it into action?
Yeah, are they saying what they're talking
Yeah,
about?
because there is a misconception on that and it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's a mess.
It is a mess. And I think that, you know, as women in the church culture, we want to learn who safe people are and who they aren't, how to not, you know, to work on if we have codependency behaviors and tendencies, learning boundaries, you know, things like that were all the things that I didn't know when I first started going to church. So those all have helped me along the way as well.
Yes.
Yeah. When you grow up in an abusive home, you don't know boundaries because like in your situation, your parents are supposed to show you the example of boundaries and they had none. And that was how it was in my home. You know, there were no boundaries. What they say goes. So,
yeah. So you're real in that it is a constant battle. And I like this quote from your book. You say, I did not like living in dysfunction and still don't. I'm highly aware of dysfunction and unhealthy behaviors now in my life and do my best to nip them, repent, and turn away from any past hangups or coping mechanisms I may try to revert back to. Dysfunction is a sneaky thing. It will try to creep back up into your life if you're not careful. In 1 Peter 5:8, it says, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. If the enemy of your soul, your mind, your will, and emotions knows there is still a chance he can get you to stumble and fall, he will do all he can to devour you. If there's a crack in your foundation, it could be an open door for him to enter in and set you up for an attack and keep you from the life the Lord has destined for you. That was a quote from your book. So the battle is real and can feel defeating at times. What are some of the ways you keep on guard and not allow that crack in your foundation?
Yeah. Similar to what we were just talking about, you know, we have to be on guard. We have to stay prayed up, stay in the word, have a community, have a support group. I mean, having accountability in your life is by far the biggest gift you can give to yourself.
yes.
If you don't have accountability and you're isolating away from others and you're not sharing what you're struggling with, because we all struggle, right?
Yes.
And with everything, right? So it's on those days where you really do feel weak that you can call your prayer partner, that you can call them and say, hey, I'm struggling in this area. This is what's happening with me today. So being really vulnerable with others and with yourself, people that are safe, people that you can trust, people that aren't going to have judgment and that are really going to be there for you in the trenches. I mean, that is the only reason that I am the woman that I am today, because I'm really authentic and real and raw about my struggles. And I can easily slip back into things. I've seen myself and shocked myself, like just in my thinking. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, okay, we're going a little too far to the right, So accountability is key. And having a support group is key as well. If you're in the church or not going to church, for sure, you definitely need it even more right now.
Yeah, we all need that support system and to be real, that have that authenticity with each other.
Yeah.
In your book, you say, I had no idea I had such a book within me. My life has been so full, and I wouldn't trade any of it. You're worth finding your voice somewhere deep inside of you. You're worth finding the beauty in your scars. That is a great message to our listeners and wherever they are at in their own story. You're using what you've been through for good. What are some of the experiences you can share with your interactions with the gals you reach out to in the strip clubs?
I love walking into the dressing room of a strip club and walking back there with a gift, with some lip gloss, some earrings, and, a little snack in it, and handing it to a woman that literally has no idea who she is. She's in her 20s. She's just there for the fun, the party, all of that, and doesn't even know what experiences are coming next, right? And just being able to share my story with her and just seeing like myself back then, right? And then sharing and being able to prophesy over each woman and telling them their own potential and who they can be, and that this is not their destiny. This is just a chapter in their story. And it's the most beautiful thing ever to experience.
To be continued. Stay tuned for next week's part 2 of Unlikely Warrior with Lisa Michelle. You don't want to miss it.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening, and until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.